Which raises an interesting question, and that is, should the local church, we know that the worldwide church should be as diverse as it could possibly be. And one of the things that we are called to do is constantly push the church over the fire trail into new groups, new people groups where the gospel can spread. But it raises an interesting question, and that is, should a local church try to be as diverse as it can be? And I'll tell you where I'm coming from on this. I remember hearing a white preacher, writer, talk about how he wanted his church to become more diverse. I think that's a good thing. But he said, and this was a white church in the South, and he said, in the South, a lot of black people there. And so he said, we want our church to reach black people. And in order to reach black people, we want our church to become more black in style. I think you know what I mean by that. I remember speaking, doing a conference at a black church in California, I'm thinking of now, and it was a stereotypical, everything you would think about, and I would say it this way, about the beauty of blackness that church had in its style. In other words, the people were amen and give it to them, preacher, and so on. And they had a choir that would dance as they sang, and it just was all the beauty of blackness in that church. And if that church, if I'd heard the leaders of that church to say, you know what, we are convicted that we want to become more diverse and we want to reach more white people like you, Josh. And in order to reach more white people, we're going to tone down our blackness. I would have said, no. I think you ought to be as welcoming and as loving and as kind to us white people as you can possibly be. But I don't think you ought to quit being a black church. And I would say to this white church that's trying to reach black people, I think you should do all you can to welcome and include black people who would want to come to your church. But I don't necessarily think that you ought to try to become something that you are not. And there is a certain tension in this. It raises another question that is not about a church level, but about a small group. Should a small group try to be as diverse as possible? And I would argue, as a small group guru, sometimes people have called me, that I don't think a small group actually should. And my observation is that small groups work best when they have as much in common as possible. In fact, that's why historically we have divided small groups according to age. And we put all the 20-something couples in one group and the 30-something couples in one group and the fifth graders in one group and the sixth graders in one group and the mid-hires in one group and the preschoolers in one group and the 1 and 2-year-olds in one group and so on, because we find it just works better that way. The more group has in common, where a group has a whole lot in common in addition to Jesus. Jesus is what the fundamental thing that we have in common, but where a church has a lot in common, where a small group particularly has a lot in common, they tend to function a little bit better.